The San Francisco Giants are World Series champions. So now what? We have made it to the top of the mountain. We've won the Fall Classic. And now we want to stay at the top of the mountain. Today we will be going through the offseason here in year number 5. First things first, we will quickly recap the World Series, specifically Game 6. It was certainly an exciting playoff run after sweeping the Dodgers, a very competitive 7-game series in the NLCS against Atlanta, the team who had eliminated us 2 years in a row. We finally got over the boogeyman. We lost Game 1 of the World Series against the Rangers, but we won 4 of our last 5. Here in Game 6, the Rangers started strong with a 2-run homer by Marte, but we quickly responded with 4 runs in the second, 2 more in the fourth, and that's all we needed. Kyle Harrison did not have his best stuff today, but the bullpen did a fantastic job of slamming the door. Kyler Rodriguez, the very first draft pick of the series, ended up winning World Series MVP. I thought Tommy Rogers deserved it a little bit more, but Kyler was still fantastic in his own right. Jung-Hoo Lee wins the postseason MVP. No surprise, he hit nearly 500. Clearly deserved that award. We will be quickly doing our postseason studs and duds of the year. I think in the Marlins franchise last year, after we won the World Series, I didn't do any duds, considering we had just won the championship. But we're not going to do that this year because there were a handful of guys who were quite disappointing. But obviously, there were a lot of players who also really produced for us, specifically the outfield. However, I'm only going to give it to one of these guys. It won't be Jung-Hoo Lee or Tommy Rogers, even though they were our 2 best players. They've been amongst our best players throughout the year. I thought about Kyler Rodriguez, but he wasn't that impactful before the World Series, albeit when the lights shined the brightest, he was at his best. Instead, we're going with Leody Taveras. Did not play in the NLDS due to injury, but he really produced in both the NLCS and the World Series against his former team. He earned the opportunity to go up 1. And then in the bullpen, both Jojo Romero and Felix Bautista, we would not have won the World Series without them. So they'll both go up by 1 as well. Romero, by the way, is now a 90 with 8 potential. His price tag certainly goes up, along with Bautista. Both of them, with pretty much the entire bullpen, are all free agents after this year. As for the duds of the postseason, we'll start with Brendan Donovan. He was disappointing. Granted, I thought he did pretty good off the bench in the World Series. We are also going to go with Munetaka Murakami. He was unbelievably good this year. Silver Slugger, home run champ, homered in Game 6 of the World Series, but he was not on his A game here in the month of October, and neither was Stone Garrett, who's been amongst our most consistent and reliable position players ever since we acquired him a few years ago. But he really struggled all postseason. Now, he did homer twice in the World Series against the Rangers, but otherwise he really was not that good. Nonetheless, the 6 players we went over here all have one thing in common, and it's that they're all World Series champions. Now, we've got to figure out how we're going to win another, and it's going to be challenging because so much of our core is not under contract. Jose Ramirez, Ian Happ, Logan Webb. We have options on Sandy Alcantara, Brendan Donovan, and J.P. Crawford. Yariel's not a free agent, that's a lie, but we're losing the rest of the bullpen. John Schreiber, Jojo Romero, Camilo Doval, Felix Bautista, Joel Payamps, and Yel De Los Santos. And we have to be smart with how we use our money because Blake Sabol, Kyle Harrison, and Jung-Hoo Lee are all free agents after next year. So we're guaranteed to not have 2 position players under contract with J-Ram and Happ, and we might lose the rest of the infield. Brendan Donovan's on a team option. J.P. Crawford's on a mutual option. We could be losing our top 2 starters. Logan Webb is not under contract. Sandy Alcantara has a mutual option. And then quite literally the entire bullpen, other than Yariel Rodriguez and Genesis Cabrera, is not currently under contract next year. It's going to be really hard to pay everyone, even though we are a bigger market team as we look at the list of retirements. Brandon Martirano, who did play on the big league team for 6 games in year 2, and he was actually pretty good. He hit like 300. Unfortunately, never got a chance once again. Cole Irvin as well. He was on our team the first half of the year. Traded him to Baltimore at the deadline. Did not play for them after that. And then looking at the list across Major League Baseball, not a lot of star-studded names. Robert Suarez. There's Brandon Belt, the former Giant, who was a big piece at the 2012 and 2014 World Series champions, although his best years came after that. Only made 1 All-Star team, surprisingly, in 2016. He had such a good year in 2023, and then nobody wanted him for some reason. Javier Baez retires, thank God. Johan Camargo's in here, CJ Cron. You've got Tyler Fitzgerald, the former Giant, who only played 5 games with us. He's turned into a good player in real life, but it did not happen here. Marco Gonzalez, Sonny Gray, Raisel Iglesias is done. Tim Locastro. You've got Adalberto Mondesi, Dylan Moore, Hector Neris, Ryan Presley. It's time for Paul Sewald to pitch. If you know, you know. Chris Taylor, Michael A. Taylor, Blake Trinan is down there. Certainly not a great list, though. It's not ideal when the best players in that group were relief pitchers. So now it's time for the fun part. We have pretty much half of our roster not under contract. That's why winning the World Series this year was so important, because we knew there was a chance we would be losing a whole lot of guys on our team. Now, luckily, we are going to have plenty of money to spend. We have a wide budget, and we don't have that many big contracts currently on the books other than Munetaka Murakami, so we can spend freely as we wish. We'll start with Sandy Alcantara, who's got a mutual option for $15 million, and on our end, this is a no-brainer. He finished in second place for the Cy Young. He didn't rise to the occasion in the playoffs, but he wasn't bad. We're going to obviously exercise it, but he has to agree to it as well. J.P. Crawford is on a mutual option, and Brendan Donovan is on a team option. Crawford was a trickier one here because he's regressed in some ways. His power has certainly gone down, 27 home runs over the last 2 years after 26 the year prior. But he's gotten better in other ways. He had one of the best defensive seasons of his career. Career high in walk rate as well. So even though he's physically declining, he's improving in some of the mental areas. And that makes me think that he's going to be good into his 30s. So for $10 million, I figure why not? We don't really have a clear replacement on the roster. I think Edwin Arroyo might be 1 year away from surpassing him. He still has to accept it, although I would expect Crawford would take the $10 million option. And then Brendan Donovan, purely a team option. This is an easy one for me. Yes, he struggled in the postseason, but he's been really good for us. I don't want to lose him. We also have Cedric Mullins, who we're going to decline. That was not a particularly tough decision. A tougher choice, though, is how we're going to spend some money on these pitchers. 6 of our key relievers, along with Logan Webb, and possibly Sandy Alcantara, if he says no to the $15 million. So we'll start with Logan Webb, who is a very interesting case. Obviously, one of the core guys on the roster coming into the series. And he's been a good player, never made the All-Star team, never was great, but a really solid pitcher for us. Now, we did not use him at all in the postseason because he was injured. In some ways, we won a World Series without him. And because of that, I think our pitching rotation will be in a fine spot without him, and I don't think we need to give him a $14 million multi-year deal. So we're going to let Logan Webb go, and we're going to use that money on, say, the bullpen, because I don't want to lose these guys. Jojo Romero has been nails over the last 2 years and unbelievably good in the postseason. Bautista's only been here for a couple of months, but he has been fantastic. And then, of course, Camilo Doval coming off one of the worst seasons of his career, but he's still a really good player in his own right. So these 3 guys are all asking for pretty similar deals. We're going to do 3 years, 33 with a player option for both Romero and Felix Bautista, and then Doval's going to get offered a little bit less, 3 years, $24 million with a player option. As for some of the other relievers, I still want to get these middle of the bullpen guys back, especially if anyone in the big 3 of Romero, Bautista, and Doval ends up saying no. So for $4 million, and Yel De Los Santos, I would love to have him back. John Schreiber as well, even though he's getting older, he hasn't really gotten worse. And then Joel Payamps, he's a solid player, but I think we're going to let him walk. As for position players, we've got 2 big ones right here with Ian Happ and Jose Ramirez. What a signing Ian Happ ended up being. He flew under the radar in free agency. We scooped him up in January, and he's been awesome. 8.7 WAR, really good player for us at the top of the order. I think he's got a little bit left in the tank. We're going to give him a 2-year, $21 million deal with a mutual option for the second year. And then Jose Ramirez, I thought he played pretty well for us after the deadline. Had some good stretches in the postseason, although it seems like he kind of ran out of gas at the end. I don't really think we need him, though, given all the infielders we have, so I think we're going to let him go. These will be our 6 offers, Ian Happ and the 5 relievers. Everybody else we're not going to offer a contract to, most notably Logan Webb, Jose Ramirez, and Joel Payamps. Maybe we'll see what those markets look like in the open market, but I think it's pretty unlikely any of them come back. Now the question, though, is will Sandy Alcantara and J.P. Crawford accept their mutual options? I would guess Crawford probably will, and Sandy probably won't, although we will have to see. So JP says yes, as I figured, he will be back for at least one more year, while Sandy Alcantara ends up saying no. So that means he does want to enter the open market. Now, interestingly, he doesn't really want much of the raise. I think he would rather more long-term security, and I think we can give that to him. 3 years, $45 million with a player option. Given how good he was this year, I think he's earned that. And now that brings us into free agency. Alcantara and Happ have accepted their extensions. They will be back. The other 5 relievers, meanwhile, will all be hitting the open market. It's supposed to be a loaded reliever class, and, well, we could be losing a lot, potentially. The bullpen's certainly the area we're going to be looking at. Looks like a really good top of the free agency class overall, but we're going to get the dirty work done first. Elijah Warren will be added to the 40-man roster. We drafted him in the second round of year 1, which ended up being a great draft for us. Kyler Rodriguez, Fernando Molina, Scott Rios, and maybe Warren can give us an impact as well. I was having a harder time with Simone Vincent, but I think I'm going to say yes. I would rather not lose him. As for arbitration, we've got a lot of guys here, including Tommy Rogers, who shouldn't be, because we called him up in May, his rookie year. So I'm not really sure why he got the extra bit of service time, but he is included amongst this list. A lot of really good players here. Most of these guys I want back. But with Tommy Rogers, I think it's time to give him a long-term deal. He has certainly earned it. I was very reluctant to do it after years 1 and 2 because he wasn't that good. I mean, he was impressive given his age, but he wasn't all that great of a player, and this year he certainly was. Silver Slugger, one of the best hitters in baseball, one of the best players in the postseason for us. So he has earned a large deal. How about this? 12 years, $360. That contract could get ugly at the end. But Tommy Rogers, I want him to be the face of this team for the next decade. So that's exactly what we're going to try to do. I'm not going to give an extension to anybody else here. Blake Sabol's a really good player, but he has his limitations against lefties. So I don't really want to give him a super long-term deal. And then Kyle Harrison, another really good player. But health has been a concern for him. He has missed at least 10 starts in 3 of the last 4 years. He's only thrown over 170 innings once. So I don't know how much he's going to be able to get through a full workload, especially if we pay him into his 30s. Nonetheless, we're going to offer everybody here arbitration other than Liover Peguero. There's not really a spot for Peggy, so I think we're going to let him walk. Tendering contracts, we offered it to pretty much everybody. Nobody was given a long-term deal. I thought about it for Fernando Molina, but I think I want to hold off for one more season, have a full year of him start to finish in the rotation. I'm very confident in him, but I want to see it from April to hopefully October of him as a starter. This free agency class looks really good, and we've got money to spend if we want to. Now, I don't think we really need many reinforcements offensively. Everybody is back other than Jose Ramirez. And we don't even really need a replacement for him because we're so deep. Pitching is the area we're going to be looking at. We've got 5 relievers who we are currently offering, and that number could certainly change. But I think the plan is we're pretty much going to run it back offensively, bring back the entire core other than Jose Ramirez. Pitching, though, we may look to make additions. I think a 5th starter could be in the cards. Scott Rios is talented, but are we sure he'll be ready at the beginning of the year? And then right now in the bullpen, we have 2 relievers, Yariel Rodriguez and Genesis Cabrera. That's not enough. So I think Walker Buehler would be a good stopgap starter for us. He's been very good over the last 2 years with the Royals. I think he's a really good bridge for a guy like Scott Rios, who we don't necessarily have to push in there right away if he has a bad spring. 1 year, $10 million. He seems to like that more than the Kansas City offer. We're going to stick with our 5 offers on the relievers that we currently have, and we are going to start to simulate. So within the first day of free agency, we got some big news, and it's not good news. Jojo Romero is no longer interested in our offer. Neither is Felix Bautista. So 2 of our top relievers will not be returning. Jojo Romero, 4 years, 42 with the Twins, as Riley Green gets a bag from the Pirates. And then Felix Bautista, 5 years, 49 from the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm very happy for these guys. They will go down as Giants legends. And again, without them, we do not win the World Series. No shot. Those 2 had one of the most historic postseason runs I've ever seen. We gave them more money, oddly enough, particularly Bautista, but I guess the 2 of them wanted the long-term financial security. I would have been happy to match either of those deals, but unfortunately, we never get the chance to. So we have to bring back Camilo Doval, and we're going to offer him a raise going up to 3 years, 27. But Camilo Doval cannot do it alone, and there are some other really good relievers in here. Emmanuel Clase obviously has a lot of interest. Edwin Diaz does not, though, and Edwin Diaz is not too much worse. So I think Diaz, being the new partner in crime for Camilo Doval, could make sense. 2-year deal, $21.5 million. I don't think he's quite on the level as JoJo and Felix, but he's not that much worse. I also want to look at Ian Hamilton. He's been solid with the Yankees. Certainly not on the level of JoJo Romero or Felix Bautista, but he's a solid player for them. His whips are kind of high compared to his ERA, so that tells me that this is somebody who can get out of jams, get out of sticky situations with runners on base. It doesn't take long for Edwin Diaz to accept the deal with us, so he will be joining forces, hopefully, with Camilo Doval in the back end of the bullpen, assuming Doval wants to come back. There is a market for him currently. George Kirby signs a 9-year deal with the Houston Astros. That is a lot of money, so he will be staying in the American League West, jumping ship to Houston. Anthony Volpe, a huge deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. Could they be back in contention with the Atlanta Braves losing so many guys? Ronald Acuna, Gunnar Henderson, Emmanuel Clase, O'Neal Cruz, all free agents for Atlanta. The Braves, though, are going to sign Kyle Bradish, which is odd because the one thing they're not losing is starting pitching. I don't see where Bradish is going to fit. I guess the thought process is that they're going to trade another one of their pitchers for an impact bat in order to replace Acuna and Henderson and O'Neal Cruz. I noticed here in the arbitration stage that somebody is missing. Where is Tommy Rogers? It looks like he has accepted his 12-year deal. Tommy Rogers is a San Francisco Giant for the long haul. I hope you like him because he will be sticking around. Everybody we've offered contracts to other than Camilo Doval has accepted. So that means Ian Hamilton, Walker Buehler, and Yel de los Santos. And I'm not going to scroll all the way down to John Schreiber, but he has accepted as well. There is a market for Doval. The Twins want to pair him up with Romero again. The Marlins are interested as well. They're also offering Ronald Acuna $400 million and are currently the only offer for him. The Yankees are currently the leader for Gunnar Henderson. A lot of teams like Clase and Alvarez. Logan Webb is a market with the Rays, Phillies, and Blue Jays at the top. No interest for O'Neal Cruz yet, oddly enough, as we continue to simulate through the end of November, past Thanksgiving into December. Not a lot of movement here over that next stretch, but I would certainly expect some fireworks with these bigger free agents to happen pretty soon. We will start things off with Atlanta. They are adding another pitcher, Tyler Glasnow. They really have 7 all-star pitchers right now. Again, they're going to trade some of those guys, but still kind of wild. Nick Lodolo to the Royals, that's a big one. Francisco Alvarez to the Cardinals, that's also a big one. And then, bang! 10 years, $400 for Ronald Acuna to the Miami Marlins. An odd landing spot. The Marlins are not a team who usually spends money. I would imagine they told Acuna they plan on making some big moves. They've got a great farm system. They've got the pieces to do it. Spencer Torkelson, meanwhile, signs with the Mets. They got Ronald Acuna, but we got Spencer Torkelson. We're just fine. Anyway, let's talk about the Marlins real quick because this is certainly an odd landing spot, but again, they have a loaded system, and I would expect them to be very aggressive in the trade market to pair Ronald Acuna up with some stars and make the Marlins a team to watch in the NL. Logan Webb is a Philadelphia Philly, 4 years, $66. So we will still get to see him pretty regularly on a Phillies team who is certainly expected to compete, especially with the addition of Anthony Volpe. So no more Logan Webb here in San Francisco. Hunter Brown signs a big 5-year deal with the Rays. Bo Brisky to the Blue Jays for similar money. A lot of these pitchers starting to fly off the board. Tristan Casas to Miami on a really team-friendly deal. There is step 1 of the Marlins' master plan to pair Ronald Acuna up with some stars. Emmanuel Clase back to the AL Central. He signs with the Kansas City Royals, who already added Nick Lodolo, making some big additions to the pitching staff. Jarren Duran to the Dodgers. He will replace Tristan Casas, I guess, and James Outman, who is a free agent. The Dodgers certainly not losing as many pieces, though, as Atlanta is this year. You'll notice we have no more offers left. That means Camilo Doval has accepted. He will be back. We're going to need him to be better this year, though, with JoJo Romero and Felix Bautista gone. In terms of the top free agents left, There's Gunnar Henderson. Yordan Alvarez would certainly be an interesting one. He doesn't look like he's that expensive. But the problem is, I don't think he's a fit here. He doesn't offer anything defensively. He's coming off a really bad season for his standards last year. And plus, we don't need another lefty anyway. And the same goes for Oneil Cruz. The Braves, interestingly enough, are not in first place. They're offering him the most money, but the A's and the Pirates are ahead. So he does not want to return to Atlanta, oddly enough. Continuing to move forward, Roansy Contreras to the Chicago Cubs on a 3-year deal for $33 million. The Marlins with another splash. They bring back Jake Berger, who they traded away a couple years ago. So they are really going all out in terms of spending for Ronald Acuna. And look at this. Yordan Alvarez is an Atlanta Brave. Why does this make so much sense? He's not Ronald Acuna, but he's a damn good consolation prize, and a much cheaper one at that. $84 million instead of $400. Hard to fault Atlanta for replacing Acuna for a much cheaper alternative. Dean Kremer to Detroit. The Cubs had another starter, trading for Brady Sr. I don't like that they traded Ha-Seong Kim, though. He's just been really good over the last couple of years. Ezekiel Tovar will stay in the NL West. He signs with the Diamondbacks. Logan O'Hoppe will be going to the Washington Nationals, and he will be joined by Gunnar Henderson, who will stay in the NL East. Atlanta loses another soldier. First it was Clase, then it was Acuna, now it was Henderson. Unlike us, the Braves have not been paying their guys this year, largely because they have so many other contracts. They kind of knew this would be their last chance with this core as well. But again, they'll be very active on the trade market as we make it to the winter meetings and the draft lottery. And the lottery results ended up being quite interesting. So the Yankees and the Red Sox climbed to number 1 and 2. The draft lottery is rigged allegations. They might have taken a boost here. I feel like every lottery we've done recently is rigged. In the Warriors series, the Celtics have jumped up twice. The Lakers have moved up. Here it's the Yankees and the Red Sox. Like, this cannot be a coincidence, right? Let's simulate through December now into the Rule 5 draft. Usually I don't make Rule 5 picks, but I was surprised to see Chase Dollander here, former first rounder with the Colorado Rockies, and I think I'm going to do it. He has not been great for them, certainly not worth the top 10 pick that they used on him, but he's a really talented player, and why not try to resuscitate his career? I think there's some real talent there. If it doesn't work out, we can always send him back to the Rockies. We do lose Vicente Alegre. He is going to the Cardinals, which is unfortunate. He was our international free agent signing all the way back in year 1. I was really high on him. I thought he'd be the long-term catcher, but injuries have just really been a problem for him. Now he gets to back up Francisco Alvarez. He'll get an opportunity in the big leagues, but a low-pressure one since he won't be a starter. So now we're going to simulate through December into February, kind of the dead point of the offseason. But Oneil Cruz goes to Toronto for less money than Atlanta offered. I'm not sure why he doesn't want to go back to the Braves. But he will be going to the Blue Jays, and Oneil Cruz will be joined by Shea Langoliers. Believe it or not, the Blue Jays did not finish in second place for a free agent signing. Rare. The blind squirrel finds the nut. Toronto has been a team who's been very up and down over the last couple of years. It seems like they want to be aggressive and spend. Nolan Gorman back to the Cardinals. They traded him away recently. Now he's back. What a move. James Outman to the Twins. Ahmed Rosario to the Baltimore Orioles. That brings us into February. The free agency class is now officially cooked. This is where we get to arbitration hearings. And now this is where we're going to talk about some trades across the league, but I don't think we're going to make any. I think we're in a good spot. We let go of Logan Webb. We unfortunately lost out on Jojo Romero and Felix Bautista, but we had some replacements with Walker Buehler, Ian Hamilton, and Edwin Diaz. We also lose Jose Ramirez as well. He ended up signing with the Baltimore Orioles on a 1-year cheap contract. If I knew he was going to get that little, I certainly would have considered bringing him back. But we don't replace him because we don't need to. Our offense is already very deep as is. As for the rotation, I think this is going to be the 5 that we start with. Scott Rios certainly being the wild card. He may get an opportunity at some point this year, but again, I don't want to necessarily rush him. And then Chase Dollander, I think we're going to use him as a long reliever. We have to keep him on the roster all year. If not, we would send him back to the Rockies. So let's talk trade. The 2 teams I'm eyeing up the most are the Braves and the Marlins. The Braves are going to be trading away some of these pitchers for impact offense. So we'll start with Michael King, who is going in division to the Nationals for Mason Wynn. Washington signed Gunnar Henderson, the former Brave, so they don't really need Mason Wynn, who will replace Henderson at short for Atlanta. So those two guys essentially swap spots. As for Kyle Wright, he is going to the Rockies for Brenton Doyle, who hasn't really been used by Colorado in recent years, but he's an unbelievable defensive player, really fast, not a great hitter, but he kind of offsets the addition of Yordan Alvarez in some ways. The Yankees are trading Josh Naylor to the Mariners for a talented pitching prospect in Luis Mirandez. The Naylor signing hasn't really worked out. The Yankees are going to move on. Nolan Chanuel, though, has been great with the Angels, who had a really good year last year, finally making it back to the playoffs, but they don't want to extend him long-term, and he is going to the Dodgers, where he will replace Tristan Casas. Pete Crow Armstrong is going to the Angels, so LA will be making a contending move. Caleb Mitchell, the big piece, back to the Cubs. Mitchell was the number 1 overall pick a couple years ago. He was in the Tommy Rogers draft. The Angels certainly regret that. I really liked Mitchell. I'm surprised he's turned into a bad player, but the Cubs are going to try to revive his career. And now the Marlins. Here's the big one. Elly De La Cruz joining forces with Ronald Acuna. Ellie's on the last year of his deal. He's obviously turned into a really good player with Cincinnati. And the Braves said they would give Ronald the superstars to pair with him. So Noelvi Marte is going back to the Reds, where he was in Season 1 and was traded for Sandy Alcantara. Juan de la Cambiera, one of the best prospects in the system, also going to the Reds. But the Marlins are not done. They'll be getting Jordan Walker from the Cardinals for Ryan Weathers. The Marlins are deep in terms of pitching. The Cardinals need an arm, so that's a move that I feel like makes a lot of sense. That's where we're going to wrap things up today. We're not going to do international free agents in this episode. We will be doing that next time around. The final international free agents cycle of the series. And then from there, we will get started with season number 6. I'm not entirely sure how much of the season we will get through in the next episode. It will certainly be a lot, but I will explain things in detail once we get there. We'll cross that bridge later. Hope everybody enjoyed, though. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.